Hello there. No doubt if you've been brought here, it's for one of two reasons. One, you've been brought from my previous video in which I've outlined that this is going to be an informal discussion regarding to the proposed payment model on the alpha forums for EverQuest Next Landmark. Or two, you've just accidentally happened across it on the internet, in which case, welcome. Essentially, I wanted to make a private video about how I feel the payment model seems. Now, I'm aware that this is subject to change and that they are just plans, but this is quite late on in closed alpha, and I don't think they would give that information willingly to the alpha players unless they were seriously considering what they'd said, which is odd because it feels like it was written by several different people at the same time. Some aspects of the payment model are incredibly fair, some I honestly think are worse than a Facebook game. So why is this the case? Well, I will outline what my thoughts are around this based on the same format that I did in the last video, only instead of just giving you the base facts, I will tell you exactly what I think about each of the proposed payment model phases. So first up, phase 1. I stand by what I said in the previous video with this. I think it's a very fair system. I think if you're upfront about it, it makes it even fairer. If somebody wants to get into a closed alpha to experience a game that they obviously care deeply about even before its existence, then that's fine. You know, it's clear as day what they're getting themselves in for because it's plastered across the front of it. And I think it's also good that the company is upfront about the fact that this is a payment model for them. They are using it as a form of revenue. But not only are they using it as a form of revenue, they now have an extra 20,000 developers working on their game, which is very beneficial for everyone, you know, even for the people who will eventually buy the game on commercial release. So yeah, I've got no problems there. Phase 2, I have great difficulty with. It's a bit of a bag of cats. The first part is absolutely fine. The proposed notion of being able to sell aesthetic clothing is not a new one. Plenty of games have done it in the past. It's been very fair that way. A good example of it would be Guild Wars 2. I think it's going to work in the same way in that respect, that you transmogrify the gear onto the stats of other gear, and therefore you have the same level of skill, but it's just a different appearance, which is absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. The notion of being able to buy resources, I cannot disagree with this more. I think it's wholly abhorrent to the way that the game is supposed to run. And people might say, well, it's not pay to win because there's no win state in Landmark. And I disagree. It's not a traditional model, but it is a model of competitiveness between other people. And when you introduce a competitive streak and a payment model, bad things happen, especially when you introduce a rating system that's coming down the line. Now, say for example you see someone's building, they've obviously spent a lot of time and effort on it, you know, it's like a pure obsidian castle or whatever, and looks the part, and you say to yourself, without this payment model in mind, that's an amazing amount of effort that someone's put into this. They obviously care deeply about their keep, you know, they really have put and lavished an extreme amount of work into it. They are skilled at Landmark, right? They're skilled at the game. When you introduce this payment model, that goes from admiration to detest them. You look at them and you think, how much have they paid for their work? It works both ways as well, because if you see someone else doing that and you think, well, I want to get a competitive edge over them, I'll just fork out some money and I'll have all the resources I need, that introduces the pay-to-win model that I was just talking about. And since I started making this video, they've actually updated the forums, and they've said that only about 5% of negativity has come out of all of the responses that they've had to these proposed plans, so they're more than likely going to go ahead with them. My response to that is that this is a closed alpha with 20,000 devoted people who obviously want this game to succeed, but also are blinded by the fact that they really enjoy what they're doing and they have paid for the privilege of even playing the game. So if you're not going to get an unbiased review based off of that client base, which is, it's horrible me saying because this is going to be the people who are mostly watching this video, and I realise that I'll probably get some critical response for this, but I do feel it's important to mention that outside of this little community, this is going to be a PR disaster. because on the front of it, when people look to see how this game's payment model works, they will see that EverQuest Next Landmark sells resources in an in-game cash shop so that you don't have to work. And that's all that people are going to see. And, you know, I'm only a small YouTuber. There are people who are out there like Total Biscuit who are going to get hold of this, and it's going to be a massive news story for them, and it's going to be a massive amount of negativity for the company and for the launch of the game. It's true. It's gonna really backfire on the company, and I wish I could convince them otherwise against this proposal. Moving on to phase 3, it's the same situation. In fact, it might actually be worse. Phase 3 introduces a load of shortcuts to the interface of the game that will allow you to purchase for real cash anything that you need in the game. And since the additional notes have come out, we actually now know that this consists of everything in the game. Everything that you want in Landmark is payable by cash. Real cash. Your cash. And I don't know how a company as big and as smart as Sony and EverQuest can think that this is going to go down well. We looked at the debacle that's happened over things like Dungeon Keeper and, you know, on iOS, and I think that if a company is able to justify this at this point in time in 2014, they have got some serious rethinking to do, and they are going to have a really bad backlash from the community. Just to add to this point, I looked at a response by one of the devs to a post regarding to how fair this payment model was actually going to be, and somebody was making the point that how do we know that you're not going to extort us for a large amount of money based on these sorts of transactions? And the response from the dev was like, you've got to trust us, you know, we are a trustworthy company, we are not like these other companies that will mess you about with extortionate prices. We want to keep our community locked up. We want them to keep playing our game. And my response to that is, why? Why should we trust you? You know, we know that you've built some good games in the past, but this is an entirely different game. And you might say, well, okay, just wait and see. A wait and see proposal is fine. But I don't think that's true, because if you look at these proposals, they can't be fair. It's just not a fair practice. I don't understand how this has happened. I think that they need to get in some experts from outsourced companies, like maybe some consultation from James Portnow of Extra Credits. He's done payment models in the past. He's always interested in advancing payment models for games companies. And I've got no problem with them trying to make a load of money. I think they should. I think it'd be great if they could make lots of money, but this is just not the way to do it. Not if you want a really big and active player base for EverQuest Next. Going on from this, phases 4 and 5 give rise to this notion I had earlier that this was written by a committee, because it juxtaposes the model presented in 2 and 3 so much that it just doesn't seem to make any sense to me, you know, excluding the aesthetic clothing that they've talked about. Essentially, phase 4 gives rise to the player studio, which will enable players to sell their items, their materials, and their templates, not only for in-game currency, but also for real cash. And the EverQuest Next Landmark team will be taking a cut of any of the real transactions that go on there. And that obviously mimics the Diablo 3 auction house, but in a way that I think would actually work, because there's more reason to have it in a game like Landmark and Next, especially as the templates that will go from Landmark will be then sold to players in Next, and I think that's really exciting. So if the success of Landmark and Next is anything to go by, then this will be a very lucrative business for them. But 2 and 3 won't allow Next and Landmark to be as big as they could be, because people will be put off by that payment model. And then going on to phase 5, which might seem like I'm almost contradicting myself again, that you'll be able to buy larger ticket items like mounts and vanity pets and more clothing. But also they're also introducing a system whereby you can buy sound packs. And again, this is a really creative way of making money. What happened to that site? Who came up with this? Get them to write the whole thing. because I think that's indicative of how mismatched this model is to me. I mean, it might just be my opinion, but this is why I've made this video, because I was so strongly opposed to part of this and so vehemently defending of other parts that it just blows my mind. I'd love to hear your thoughts anyway. Do me the honour of leaving me some comments in the section down below. I will do my best, very, very best, to respond to them, because I do feel very strongly about this subject. If you liked what you saw in this video, please like and subscribe, and see you again soon.